Do you want the defense, leadership, and winning that Bill Russell brings, or do you want the individual greatness and records of Wilt Chamberlain? Although it's the oldest NBA debate, it continues to pique the interest of fans of all generations. Do you put more weight on winning or talent? We're going to argue both sides and see which one is truly the greater player. We're also going to count on your expertise to help us settle this 60-year-old debate for good. The first thing that we want to point to is their head-to-head record. After all, they played in the same era and played the same position. And this one isn't close at all. Bill Russell has the advantage. In the regular season, he has a record of 57-37. In the playoffs, they faced each other 8 times. Russell won in 7 of those 8 playoff matchups. He has a 29-20 record, which gives him an overall record of 86-57. That is a 29 game difference. After hearing that stat, you would think that should be the end of this debate. After all, isn't that the most important factor? This is where we run into the first big twist. Their numbers against each other is the next biggest factor. This is where Wilt has the biggest advantage. He averaged twice as many points, was much more efficient, and averaged more rebounds. In the playoffs, the difference is just as noteworthy. The numbers say that Wilt didn't have a lot of trouble scoring at an efficient rate, while Russell was barely averaging over 40%. If you're on Wilt's side of the debate, you're arguing that Wilt outperformed him in the vast majority of their head-to-head battles. In fact, out of their 94 regular season matchups, Wilt was outscored by his rival only 5 times. Out of their 49 playoff matchups, Wilt was outscored 6 times. That means that 93% of the time, Wilt was scoring more. But that's not all. In the regular season, there was one game where Wilt gave the Celtics 62 points on 60% shooting and 28 rebounds. There were 3 other games where he scored over 50 points and 16 additional games where he scored over 40 points against Russell. The most Bill scored against Chamberlain was 37 points. In the rebounds department, there was one game where Wilt pulled down 55 rebounds. There were 5 other games where he recorded over 40 rebounds. Russell pulled down 40 rebounds once against him.
As Russell, I've heard, explained to everybody and once to me, he gave up 4 inches, 40 pounds. Wilt was an equally good athlete. There was one exceptional difference about him. That Russell, in terms of rebounding, is that Wilt was I call a gatherer. Wilt had the flex and launch, whereas Russell would boom take off without any kind of flex. But Russ tried to use his lateral mobility to get Wilt to move side to side more than he wanted to. Wilt wasn't that great laterally. Wilt was great north-south. He wasn't great east-west. Russell was extraordinary east-west, as well as north-south. And that's the only edge he had.
In the playoffs, Wilt added another 50-point performance in 4 other 40-point games. In one of their playoff matchups in 1967, Chamberlain pulled down 41 rebounds. From an individual standpoint, there is no question who was a better performer, who was the more talented player. It was obviously Wilt the Stilt, and there were plenty of times where he imposed his will against Russell.
He's on his way to scoring 50 points a game and 25.6 rebounds a game for the season. Okay.
Wow.
He had developed. It was at some point in his career he developed a turnaround jumper, and
right.
a little jump hook and all. So I'm not sure how much of a varied repertoire he had. It wasn't all dunks and tips.
Well, also for a big guy, I mean, he was a very agile athlete. This guy was an Olympian.
Damn right he was. You should see. I've seen videos of the early Wilt and even the Kansas Wilt bringing the ball up. At times, showing you he could handle the ball. And of course, he was an athlete, a high jumper, and a quarter miler.
For some, this pardons his losing record against the Celtics legend. How could you blame him for coming up short with those numbers? The reason why he lost so many times was because he never had a better team. Is this true? That was certainly the narrative for the first act of his career. During his time with the Philadelphia/San Francisco Warriors, they were always the underdogs. During his 6 years there, the Celtics were the more talented team. However, we don't want to go overboard and say that the Warriors had no talent. In 4 of his 6 seasons there, they either had the second or third best record in the league. There were also 4 seasons where he had 2 All-Star teammates. Paul Arizin, Tom Gola, and Guy Rogers were Hall of Fame worthy players for their time. But from 1960 to 1965, the Celtics were loaded with iconic players. We're talking about Bob Cousy, Bill Sharman, Tom Heinsohn, Sam Jones, John Havlicek, and great role players like Casey Jones, Tom Sanders, and Frank Ramsey. Wilt needed to go above and beyond if they wanted any chance at beating this team in a 7-game series. But even while posting historically great numbers, it still wasn't enough to beat this team. Give him better teammates and he would have destroyed the Celtics. That is what many argue. Well, that actually did happen. For the second act of his career, he played with some legendary players. During his 3.5 seasons with the Philadelphia 76ers, he played with Hall of Fame players Hal Greer, Billy Cunningham, and Chet Walker. Then in 1969, he played with Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. Did you know that Wilt played with the players that posted the 3rd, 4th, and 5th most points throughout the entire 60s? On top of that, Wilt once called Chet Walker the greatest one-on-one scorer he's ever played for or against. He wasn't just hyping up his teammate. There have also been other players that have put him in the same class as Elgin Baylor and Jerry West as far as individual offensive greatness. There's a reason why he's a 7-time All-Star. Then there's Billy Cunningham, who is widely considered as one of the greatest 6-man players in league history. In their historic 1967 season, he averaged 18.5 points per game in just 26 minutes per game. That is not only the 7th highest scoring average by any player while playing less than 27 minutes per game, but is up to par to what Tom Heinsohn and Bill Sharman were doing for the Celtics. This means that for 5 seasons, his teams had just as much talent and were just as deep as any team Bill Russell has ever been on. But you know what's something that the ringmaster has never experienced in his entire career? Having a teammate average 37.9 points per game on just under 50% shooting in a final series. In the 1969 finals, Jerry West recorded the 5th highest scoring average for a final series ever. That's the kind of help he had. It shouldn't be a surprise that a Wilt Chamberlain-led team finished with the best record from 1966 to 1968. In 1969, his team finished with 7 more wins than the Celtics. In those 4 years, he played against the Celtics in the playoffs each time. Despite having that advantage, he only beat Russell once. So if Wilt was the better player and he had the better team, why couldn't he come out on top in those seasons? This is where we bring a whole new dynamic to the conversation. That's their mentality. Did you elevate your game in big moments or did you shrink? Russell had the reputation of always coming through. You can even make the argument that he's the greatest clutch performer. Did you know that he participated in 21 winner-take-all contests? That includes 9 NCAA tournament games, 1 Olympic gold medal game, 10 Game 7s, and 1 deciding Game 5. Bill Russell's team won all 21.
And psychology too, and sometimes when he knew he could block a Wilt shot, he wouldn't do it, but he'd wait until it was the 4th quarter and then do it. You know what I mean? And he did that with people all the time. He used psychology as well as any center has ever used psychology.
The psych out was very essential to you. I think you were probably one of the masters at that.
The master.
The master, okay.
I understood that the game was played by very insecure people. I never forget of a guy named, one of the great players that most people don't realize how great he was, a guy named Walter Bellamy. He was a great player. Physically, I was not up to him that some nights. So I'd say, well, what am I going to do? So I'd say to him, I started talking to him. I would play very hard defense to keep him from getting the ball, and then I'd say to him, how come they don't pass you the ball? And I've been working like a dog for the last 5 minutes to keep him from getting the ball. And then say, hey man, what do you, nothing? They don't give you the ball? He'd say, yeah, they don't treat old Walter right. And then I'd have him diverted.
On the other hand, Wilt Chamberlain had some mixed results. Take for example, Game 7 of the 1962 Division Finals against Boston, or what we now call the Conference Finals. Remember, this is the same year where he averaged 50.4 points per game and 39.5 field goal attempts per game. But in this game, with their season on the line, he had 22 points on 15 shot attempts. That was the least amount of shots he took all season long. Or what about their 1968 series? The Sixers were up 3-1 on Boston, and they later had a chance to close them out in Game 6. This was when his all-star teammate, Hal Greer, scored his playoff career high of 40 points on 63% shooting. All they needed was their star player to have an adequate game, but the opposite happened. He scored 20 points while shooting 29% from the field. But that's not all. He shot 36% from the free throw line. Then, in Game 7, he made the curious decision to not get involved on offense. He scored 14 points on only 9 shot attempts. But that's not the worst part. He took a grand total of 1 shot for the entire second half. This played a huge part in the Sixers being the first team to ever lose a playoff series after being up 3-1. In the 1969 finals, do you remember when I told you that his teammate Jerry West recorded the 5th highest scoring average for a final series ever? Despite having that kind of production, they still lost the series in 7 games. A big reason why was that Wilt averaged 8.8 points less than his regular season average. He went from 20.5 points per game to 11.7 in the finals. It all culminated when his head coach refused to put him on the court in the final moments of Game 7. His own coach wanted to win the title without the most dominant player to ever grace the floor. He wasn't the only coach that was fed up with him. Neil Johnston, Dolph Chase, and Alex Hannum all had problems or expressed frustrations coaching the star center. Some didn't like that he would put himself over the team. Others didn't like that he would skip practices.
Were there times where he just checked out?
Yes, he did. That picked a funny time if that's one of those nights. Now at this point he's 12 years into his career, but still quite viable. I mean, don't worry,
Yeah.
But some nights it was there, but that he didn't. He didn't show up in Game 5 and he didn't show up in Game 7.
So Wilt won 2 titles, correct? One with Philly,
Yes,
one with LA.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it fair to say he underachieved?
Yes. Of course it is.
But Bill Russell was the ultimate team player. He knew exactly what it took to win games and was willing to make the sacrifices to help his team. He knew that if he made it a point to average a certain amount of points or to force the team to revolve the offense around him, they would never reach their full potential. It was all about allowing his teammates to play out their strengths and being there to cover their weaknesses. That's what made him the ultimate leader in basketball. So when Russell would score 15 or 18 points and the Celtics would still go on to beat their opponents by 20 points, it wasn't because they were loaded with talent. It's because no one in the history of the league affected a game in a positive manner without scoring more than Bill Russell. It's why he was voted as the MVP by his contemporaries 5 times. Keep in mind that Wilt won 4 MVPs. It was obvious to the rest of the players that no one affected winning more than Russell. But he was more than just a leader. He is the single most valuable defensive player ever. The numbers clearly indicate this. That was the reason why the Celtics in the 60s are the greatest dynasty this league has ever seen. Defense was always their biggest strength, and only one player was responsible for that. You can even say that he changed the way basketball players defended. He was revolutionary. He turned shot blocking into an art form. All they had to do was funnel their men toward him, and he would shut them down. That's what set them apart from everyone else.
His dominance as a defensive player, unless you were really knew how to play against Bill Russell, he was a menace out there. And It took me 2 years to figure out. You always had to see him before you drove. You could not, if you didn't see him, you better look to pass the ball. And so that took away a lot of layups, a lot of really close attempts to the basket. And he always he was an amazing shot blocker. Michael, he was like the plastic man. He could drive. There's pictures of him in the air. His body is like flat and he reaches over. And he's an enormous runner, really fast. Wasn't a great shooter, but he could do everything that a team needed to make up for the mistakes that these other players made, particularly defensively. And his rebounding ability allowed them to run up and down the court, and that's why they scored a lot of points.
But when you look at what Mr. Guinness has accomplished, and you'll be forced to rethink everything. He holds an astonishing 72 records. We're talking about numbers that will never be topped. The things that he accomplished are so mind-boggling that we stop to think about them. He was truly the most remarkable athlete the game has ever seen. But he wasn't just dominant individually. In the 2 times he won a title, he led his teams to a historically great season. The 1967 Sixers and the 1972 Lakers are both widely considered as one of the 10 greatest teams ever. When we're talking about a player's peak, if you want just one great season, you would go with Wilt Chamberlain. But if the goal is to win time and time again, you would have to go with Bill Russell. It all depends on what you value more. But what about you all? Who do you think is a greater player and why? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.